Before you chase the throne, seek the one who built the kingdom. Before you ask for strength, go to the source of all power. There is no real success without divine order. When you put God first, you don't just walk toward your destiny. Destiny starts running towards you. Today, I'm not here to motivate your mind. I'm here to awaken your spirit. Because the greatest victories don't begin in your hands, they begin on your knees. When you truly put God first, something extraordinary begins to happen inside you. Purpose stops being a mystery and starts becoming a map. Most people wander through life reacting to whatever comes their way, chasing temporary victories, collecting fragments of meaning but never finding the whole picture. But when you put God at the center, your spirit aligns with something higher, deeper, and infinitely wiser. You stop fighting for direction, because direction begins fighting for you. You stop asking, what should I do with my life? And instead begin to ask God, what have you already designed me for? There is a divine assignment written over your life. A purpose that existed long before fear, before doubt, before failure ever touched you. But you cannot hear that purpose if your life is loud and God is quiet. When you seek God first, the noise lowers, the confusion clears, the anxiety loosens its grip. Your heart becomes a place where His voice can land. And when you hear that voice, when you feel that gentle, powerful whisper, you realize that purpose was never something you had to create. It was something you had to uncover. Putting God first is not about religion, it's about alignment. It's about stepping into harmony with the one who designed your breath. When you align with Him, your steps begin to fall into rhythm. Decisions that used to drain you now become clear. The opportunities that once distracted you now reveal their true value. You no longer choose based on fear, pressure, or comparison. You choose based on conviction because you know your purpose is anchored in something eternal. And with alignment comes courage. When you know God is leading you, you stop walking timidly. You stop shrinking. You stop apologizing for the calling inside you. You begin to move with authority, not arrogance, but certainty. A certainty that says, if God brought me here, then this is exactly where I'm supposed to be. That kind of clarity is magnetic. It draws the right people, the right moments, the right elevation into your path. Purpose attracts what confusion repels. Putting God first also protects you from sabotaging your own destiny. When you operate without God, you chase things that shine but don't last. You commit to things that look good but drain your soul. You fight battles that were never yours and pursue goals that were never meant to be carried alone. But when God leads, you stop wasting emotional energy on counterfeit purposes. Your life becomes intentional, not accidental. And with purpose comes peace. Not the fragile peace the world offers, a kind that breaks at the first sign of trouble, but a supernatural peace that holds you steady even when everything around you shakes. When you know God aligned your path, storms don't scare you, setbacks don't break you, delays don't discourage you. You understand that every step, even the painful ones, is part of a greater design. You walk with the confidence that nothing is random, everything is refining you, shaping you, preparing you. This kind of clarity doesn't just change your direction. It changes your identity. You begin to see yourself the way God sees you. Chosen, capable, equipped, intentional. You stop living for approval and start living for purpose. You stop performing for people and start aligning with your Creator. You stop chasing success and start walking in significance. And when purpose becomes the fuel behind your actions, success is no longer something you pursue. It becomes the outcome of a life aligned with God. Putting God first doesn't just guide your path. It transforms the person walking it. When you put God first, strength stops being something you try to manufacture and becomes something you receive. Human strength is limited. It bends under pressure, it breaks under disappointment, it collapses when life becomes too heavy. But when you lean on God instead of your own understanding, you tap into a power that does not run out, does not weaken, and does not depend on how you feel. You step into a supernatural strength that lifts you when everything else tries to push you down. You stop surviving by adrenaline and start rising by anointing. There are moments in life when your own strength simply isn't enough. You can motivate yourself, discipline yourself, and push yourself. But even then, you eventually reach the end of your own capacity. That's because you were never designed to carry everything alone. God didn't create you to live by self-powered courage. He created you to live by God-powered faith. And when you place Him first, He pours into you a strength that does more than help you endure. It helps you conquer. This strength doesn't always come as a loud explosion of power. Sometimes it comes quietly, like a steady hand holding you together when the world is falling apart. Sometimes it shows up in a peace that makes no sense. Sometimes it arrives as a whispered reminder in the middle of fear, you are not alone. And in those moments, you discover that supernatural strength isn't about lifting heavy burdens. It's about being lifted by a God who refuses to let you fall. Putting God first activates a strength that changes the way you respond to challenges. Instead of panicking, you start praying. Instead of retreating, you start rising. Instead of letting obstacles break your spirit, you let them build your faith. You realize that every battle you face is an opportunity for God to prove that His power is greater than your problem. And when you trust Him, the impossible stops looking intimidating and starts looking like an invitation. This divine strength also transforms the way you see yourself. When you rely only on your own abilities, every failure feels final. Every setback feels personal. Every rejection feels like proof that you're not enough. But when God becomes your source, you understand that weakness isn't something to hide. It's something God uses. He takes what is fragile in you and reinforces it with His power. He takes what is broken and rebuilds it stronger than before. He takes what is empty and fills it with purpose. You stop asking, do I have the strength to do this? And start declaring, if God is with me, nothing can stop me. That mindset shift is not arrogance, it's faith. It's the understanding that God's strength is perfected in your weakness, and that with Him you carry a power that fear cannot defeat and pressure cannot destroy. And this strength does not only build you, it flows through you. It touches your relationships, your dreams, your decisions, your resilience. People begin to notice that you don't crumble the way you used to. You don't react the way you once did. You don't collapse under weight. You grow under it. That's the mark of supernatural strength. It doesn't just help you face battles. It trains you for them. It prepares you for victories you couldn't win alone. Putting God first gives you access to a strength that does not depend on your mood, your circumstances, or your confidence. It comes from a higher place. It carries you through deeper waters, and it equips you for greater purpose. Because when God becomes your strength, no battle becomes too big, and no weakness becomes too small for Him to transform. When you put God first, something profound happens inside you. You stop living by the labels the world stamped on you, and you begin to live by the identity God placed within you. Most people spend their lives trying to become someone, chasing validation, approval, likes, applause, recognition, because deep down they don't really know who they are. They think identity is something you build, when in reality identity is something you receive. Putting God first restores that identity. It brings you back to the truth you were created from, not the lies life has taught you. When God is not first, the world becomes your mirror. You see yourself through disappointment, through criticism, through your past mistakes, through your insecurities. You begin to believe you are what happened to you. You begin to believe you are what people said about you. You begin to believe that a broken chapter defines the whole story. But when you seek God before anything else, the mirror changes. You begin to see yourself through the eyes of the one who created you intentionally. You are reminded that you were not shaped by accidents. You were shaped by purpose. Identity in God is not fragile. It doesn't break when people leave. It doesn't crumble when someone misunderstands you. It doesn't vanish when life gets difficult. Because your identity is no longer dependent on circumstances. It's rooted in truth. And truth does not shift with emotions. When God becomes your foundation, you stop being defined by seasons. You may walk through storms, but the storm doesn't become your identity. You may face loss, but loss does not name you. You may experience failure, but failure does not describe who you are. It only describes where you've been. Putting God first restores your identity by reminding you that you are chosen, not forgotten, redeemed, not damaged, intentional, not accidental, equipped, not lacking. You begin to step into a confidence that does not come from ego, but from alignment. You walk with a steady sense of belonging because you know exactly who you belong to. You stop comparing yourself to others because you recognize that your calling is unique, your journey is specific, and your gifts are divine. And when your identity is restored, your decisions change. You stop settling, you stop shrinking, you stop allowing people to treat you like you're less than who God says you are. You start setting boundaries that match your worth. You start pursuing goals that match your calling. You start speaking with the clarity that comes from knowing your life has meaning, far beyond the moment you are in. This identity also gives you resilience. When the world tries to tear you down, you don't fall apart, you rise higher. Because your worth is no longer negotiable. It's no longer based on performance. It's no longer tied to outcomes. It's anchored in God. And when your identity is anchored, the storms that used to destroy you now deepen you. The battles that used to break you now build you. The wounds that used to define you now refine you. Identity in God gives you permission to evolve, to heal, to grow, to become. You stop living from the pain of who you were and start living from the truth of who you are in Him. And that identity becomes your shield, your strength, your compass, your foundation. Because when God restores your identity, stop searching for who you are and start living as who you were created to be. When you put God first, the doors that once felt sealed shut begin to open in ways you could never orchestrate on your own. You start to understand that favor is not something you chase. It's something that follows alignment. It's something that moves when God moves. Something that shifts the atmosphere around you long before you even arrive. When your priorities are centered on Him, He positions you in places your resume could not qualify you for. Conversations your name was never supposed to reach, and opportunities that seemed impossible just moments before. God opens doors differently than people do. People open doors based on what they see. Your talent, your achievements, your image, your connections. God opens doors based on what He placed inside you, on the purpose He wrote over your life before you even entered this world. When you put Him first, you stop relying on human approval to access divine opportunities. You stop begging for a seat at tables that were never meant for you, because you know that God can build a table specifically designed for your calling. Sometimes the doors God opens are not the ones you prayed for, they're the ones you need. There are moments in your life when you will think a door closing is a curse, but later you realize it was divine protection. You will discover that every no was leading you toward a bigger yes. When God is first, you don't panic when doors shut. You trust that the right ones will open. You understand that what God prepares for you cannot be stolen, delayed, or destroyed by anyone. And when those doors open, you walk through them differently. You don't walk with fear. You don't walk with insecurity. You walk with gratitude and authority, because you know you didn't get there by accident. You were led there. God's favor doesn't make life easier, but it does make your steps undeniable. It puts you in positions where your impact multiplies, where your gifts shine brighter, and where your purpose becomes clearer. You begin to see that success is not just a destination, it's a divine partnership. Putting God first also opens internal doors. Doors within your heart and mind that have been locked by trauma, fear, doubt, or disappointment. Sometimes the greatest door God opens is the one that frees you from who you used to be. He opens the door to forgiveness, healing, courage, and transformation. And when those inner doors open, your external life begins to flourish naturally. The breakthroughs outside you are often the result of the breakthroughs God unlocks inside you. Favor is not always loud. Sometimes it looks like meeting the right person at the right time. Sometimes it's a conversation that shifts your whole direction. Sometimes it's an idea that drops into your spirit in a quiet moment of prayer. And sometimes it's simply the ability to endure long enough to reach the door God already planned to open. When you put God first, you position yourself under the flow of favor. A flow that moves you beyond your limits and into His possibilities. And here's the truth. God's open doors never come with confusion. They come with peace, with alignment, with confirmation. You don't have to force what God has ordained. You don't have to beg for what He already designed for you. You simply have to trust, obey, and stay aligned. When your heart is surrendered to Him, He handles the pathways. He handles the timing. He handles the doors. Putting God first doesn't just open opportunities. It opens the future He prepared for you long before you knew how to walk toward it.